I'll take this opportunity to introduce our special guest today, Margaret Sinclair, who I met for a podcast interview about 2.5 years ago. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with her for a couple hours, learning about her, learning about how she got started in the profession that she's in, how she got started really learning, about herself, how she could have the tools to help people. And ever since then, my experience, working with Margaret and communicating with Margaret has always been interesting because it seems like she's always, putting herself out there to first and foremost learn and really see how she can, utilize tools out there to help the people around her and help her patients, customers, people that she's seeing, working with athletes as well. She has experience working in the sports world with football players. So this presentation is going to be on herbs. She might throw some other touches in there from other areas, but Margaret, I know, is trained in osteopathy, trained in massage, trained in herbal medicine, and is and even more than that. So I will take this opportunity, Margaret, to put you up here on stage and introduce you. Wish you luck for the presentation, and I am here with you. I'll remove myself off stage, and I will monitor the chat box as we go ahead, and read out if there's something relevant. I'll read it out, and if not, if you punched in any comments in the chat box on the right hand side of your screen that I don't read out, it's only because for the benefit of the viewers and the presentation, I will sit back and then read out the comments, read out the questions when we open up the Q&A in about 30 minutes from now, after this Margaret's presentation is over. So Margaret, thank you very, very much, and I'll circle back with you soon.
Thank you, Danny. It's lovely to see you again. So as Danny said, one of the things I do is totally and utterly in love with herbs and herbal medicine. I started off as an osteopath. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a mindfulness coach, quite a few different bits and pieces, because I love learning. I probably have a short span of attention as well, but I love getting the tools that help my clients, essentially. And herbs are one of those ones which, the first time I ever interacted with them, I was like, wow, this is magic. It was one of those random things where my mum and I were talking, and I said, hey, let's go and do a course together. Then we went to do a one-day course on herbs being used as antibiotics, and it was backed up by science and in this beautiful location. And at the end of the day, we walked out, and my mum kind of went, that was really interesting. And I just walked out with my mind blown as to how plants could be used in such amazing ways and the science behind it. And it was just fantastic. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that today, hopefully, and share some of this magic. So thank you, everyone, from coming from all around the world. We've got New Zealand and Florida and California. So thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please ask. And if I've not explained something in a way that you understand, that's for me to correct. So please, if something's not quite clear, just give us a shout and I'll try and make that clear for you. So the magic of herbs. So one of the really first things I always teach people, because I do a lot of foraging walks, so I take people on guided walks and show them how to find herbs and how to use herbs. But one thing that's really, really important is, just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good for us. So not everybody should take herbs. So if anybody's got any medical conditions or they're on any medication, got to be really, really careful, because sometimes herbs can make the medication or make the condition like work faster and harder, which we don't want, and sometimes it can clash. So if anybody is on any medication or has any medical conditions, just make sure you speak to a herbal therapist first, or a doctor, or to make sure it's okay and safe. And if you're going to go and pick your own, there's a couple of rules. The first one is kind of be 110% sure you know what it is, because there's sometimes really similar herbs. Another one is don't pick near cars, like car parks and roads, because those plants, they suck up everything around them, and if it's the fumes, then that's not so good. And the last one is always pick away from where dogs can pee on the side of the verge. some of the juiciest, most delicious looking herbs grow there, but doesn't mean they're clean and good. So those are the rules, the basics for starting to get your own. So let's have a little look. So as Danny said, we first met and started chatting, and then we did this awesome podcast, which was so much fun. I think it was my first ever podcast, and I was so nervous. And he's such a kind guy, and we were having this chat and putting the world to rights and exploring humanity and health and what it means to work in health. And then what we ended up doing is we ended up working together to create a course for the Neil Asher, and it's a foundation in herbal medicine. And what it was, it's kind of for everybody really, but aimed at therapists. And what it's about is we spend a lot of time as people taking care of everybody else, and we don't always take care of ourselves, which means that we can kind of like, it's trying to pour from an empty cup, if anyone's heard that phrase. So I've written a course and recorded it with Danny, and it is based on how to take care of yourself a little bit better. So it's based on, first part, it's about supporting yourself emotionally and mentally. So it's about stress and anxiety. And I've got some things in there about inflammation, because physical therapists, there can be a lot of physical inflammation in the body from working quite hard. So that's what the first part's about. Then the second part, it's about daily and seasonal well-being. So it's about what herbs can you take that support you through your day, that support you through stress and anxiety, or support you through the seasonality. So we've got hay fever season. We've also got cold and flu season, which is coming up soon. Then the next part of it is about some of the common conditions. So things like herbs for the menopause, herbs for muscle injuries, bruising. If you're having trouble sleeping, what can you take? How can you use it? Any headaches, that kind of thing. And then the final part, which was the most fun part to film because it was quite chaotic, is it's about how to use those herbs. It's about all the different easy ways that you can use herbs really simply to get really brilliant benefits. And we'll talk about some of these things as we go through. But yeah, the foundation course, if you're interested in herbs from a personal point of view, is a really great foundation as to how to use them and when to use them. It's a good one. So herb use. Herbs do not have to be exotic. Sometimes when I talk to people, they're thinking about the Indian herbs, the Chinese herbs, the exotic ones that can be a bit tricky to find. And actually, some of the best herbs are probably already in your kitchen. They're in the back of your cupboard, or they're in a drawer, or they're in your back garden. Some of them might even be in your local park. It doesn't have to be exotic for it to be really powerful. And actually, some of the best ones are the ones that are literally on your doorstep because they're the freshest. So herbs, they don't have to be exotic. They're just the ones that you've got, the best ones. So I thought, what can I give you guys today that's going to be beneficial? Now, I'm over in England, as you can probably tell from the accent. And at the moment, we're coming into cold and flu season. So what I thought was, let's just give some stuff that you can take away and you can start using today. So the first one is elderberries. Now, elderberries are absolutely fabulous. They are really delicious, a little bit tart, but they're great to use. Some kind of bits that you need to be aware of. The first one is they've got to be cooked, and you must never eat the pips. Why is that? It's because actually it contains an arsenic compound, and it's quite poisonous. So if you take them and eat them when they're raw, it's not so good for you. Unfortunately, on one of the walks, I didn't say that quite quick enough, and someone grabbed some and ate it, and I'm like, no, spit it out, spit it out. But there have been instances where people have been quite poorly from taking it. So cook them. That helps get rid of anything nasty, and it's just a couple of minutes of heat. Takes it away. It's absolutely fine. Also, don't use it if you're on immunosuppressants. Why is that? It's because it's fantastic for your immunity. Really boosts the immunity, which is why it's great if you're in cough and cold season. It boosts it all up. It's also a fantastic decongestant, and it helps relieve sore throats. It's this really deliciousness that just helps soothe everything. And if you've got coughs, colds, or flu or fevers, it can help battle those symptoms because it just boosts your immunity and helps you fight back. Some really easy ways of using it is you can buy a syrup or you can make a syrup. Really, really easy to buy or make, and really quite delicious, especially if you make it with honey. The other thing you can do is make a tea. Now, if you're using pretty much any herb, you just take a teaspoon of whatever herb it is. You put it in your mug, you pour your boiling water on top, and then when it's cool enough to drink, you just drink it, leaving the herb in the bottom. And what happens is the hot water will extract the medicinal properties and a lot of the yummy flavour, and that's how you can take it in. And it is one of the easiest ways of actually taking herbs. It's a brilliant way of doing it. And with elderberries, it's absolutely delicious. Another herb I thought we can talk about is rosemary. Probably got it in your kitchen or in your garden. It's a really delicious, powerful, yummy smelling herb. And the great one about this is you can have it raw or cooked. It's a little bit strong raw, but it's still delicious. So on the avoiding part, avoid if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Now that means just avoid it in big doses. If you're using it to flavour your food, that's absolutely fine. But if you're using teaspoons in mugs multiple times a day, it becomes a bit too much, because sometimes herbs can affect pregnancy and breastfeeding. There's not much science behind it, but it's just not worth the risk. Another thing about rosemary is it can inhibit our iron uptake. So if you are taking a supplement of iron, just make sure that you take the iron a few hours before or a few hours after you're going to use rosemary medicinally. So what are the properties of rosemary? Rosemary is really cool. It can help lift your mood. So it helps with things like stress and anxiety. It can also improve your memory. They've done loads of brilliant studies with students where they have used the scent of rosemary, and the students who used rosemary, they had a much better recall and memory later. Another thing it can do is it increases our absorption of nutrients in food, apart from iron, of course. So if we want to take up all that delicious macro and micronutrients, putting a little bit of rosemary in your food just really helps with the uptake of that. So you kind of get more bang for your buck from your food. It can help reduce bloating and gas, which is really helpful. So if you are prone to that, putting some in your dinner can really help just ease that off. It's also antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral, which means it can be used in a lot of different ways. So for example, any cuts or grazes, it can be used to help those. Just make sure they're nice and clean. You can use it sort of as a wash or something like that. But in the theme of what I was talking about today, kind of fighting coughs and colds, it is fantastic for coughs and colds because it's a slight antiviral property, which most coughs and colds are. It also helps fight flu and cold and sore throats. It's so soothing for a sore throat. And any chest infections, anything where it comes and sits on here, because it's so heady and so loosening, it can really help loosen off any chest infections and coughs and just help start to fight them. It can also increase blood flow. And this is really great for muscle aches. So you can use it when, I don't know, you've been doing a lot of hard work or you've been doing a lot of physical activities. You can put it in your bath. You can use it as a massage oil. And what it does is it increases the blood flow to the area, which just helps soothe and heal the area. Now, you can use it again as a tea. It's absolutely delicious as a tea. I'd advise adding a bit of honey just to make it a little bit more yummy, but it's brilliant. You can make a poultice. And what that is essentially we mush it down and we place it on top of an area. So when I was talking about being antibacterial and antifungal, if you've got a graze, you can use it literally on the graze and it will help just the antibacterial aspects, so preventing infections and things. Like I said, using it as a massage oil or as a balm, it's really, really beneficial. And actually on the course, we show you how to make all of these things in a very messy way, but it's really easy because once you know how to use these things and make them, it just makes life a little bit easier. And you can also use a tincture. Now, a tincture isn't shown in the course because what it does is it uses alcohol to extract the medicinal properties. So it's a special way of basically preserving herbs and taking out the extracts that we want to keep, and usually in a tiny weeny bottle of alcohol with the extract in, and that's easy to use. But rosemary, fantastic. You've already probably got it in your cupboard and it's got all these amazing uses and it's just so convenient. And one thing I love about herbs is you only need a little bit of knowledge and it's already beneficial for you. So another herb that is really, really powerful. Now, this was the herb that blew my mind on that first course. It absolutely blew my mind, is garlic. The science behind the use of garlic as an antiviral is profound. It's nearly as good as some of the medications that we take when we get an infection. Now, here's the thing about garlic. It has to be used raw. The second you cook it, it loses those medicinal properties, which is a real shame. But I'm afraid no kissing for anybody, because raw garlic, really strong and delicious. So if you're going to use it raw, you can chop it up, make a delicious hummus, or juice it. Juicing it's really great. It's got a little bit longer list of when to avoid. So if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, again, avoid it in large concentrations. If you're on heart medications and blood pressure medications, again, avoid it in high concentrations. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to use it to flavour your food, that's fine. But if you're going to take it a couple of times a day to help with the condition, don't do it if you've got these things going on. Also, anyone with peptic ulcers, gallstones, or taking warfarin needs to be really careful with garlic, because it can seriously affect. But the properties of garlic are just brilliant and mind-blowing. They're just fantastic. So it's antiviral, which is why we can use it if we've got a virus. Antifungal, which is really important. Antimicrobial and antibacterial. So an example of this is, I'm a crazy cat lady. I've got 4 of them. I'll put my hands up. It was kind of an accident. But one of my cats got attacked and his tail got an infection. And we were backwards and forwards to the vets trying different antibiotics. So what I did in the end was I juiced some garlic. Now here's the caveat. Garlic is very poisonous if taken in by cats. So what we did was we got him and we put it on his tail, and then we wrapped it so he couldn't get to it. And literally within 24 hours, that infection was shrinking rather than growing, because he was about to lose his tail. And then within a couple of days, the infection had gone. And all we were doing was adding this garlic juice onto his tail really carefully. That's how powerful garlic is. It just blew my mind. It was brilliant. It's great for skin infections on humans, sinus infections, chest infections, and any sort of digestive or urinary infections. It's just so brilliant and powerful. It also helps fight coughs and colds, which are viruses really. And it's a fantastic decongestant because it's just so spicy and it just clears the airways. It's just such a brilliant herb. And if you can get your head around having it raw, it's absolutely delicious. So that's garlic. Absolutely yummy. So how can you use herbs medicinally for benefit? So we've already talked about tea. Tea is probably one of the easiest ways of taking herbs, as long as they're not affected by heating, like we talked about with the garlic. So you can use them fresh or dry. You can use them frozen. I will often keep ginger in the freezer because it doesn't spoil, and it's that delicious fresh gingerness. So you literally, like I said before, you get your mug, you pop your teaspoon of fresh, dry, or frozen herb in, boiling water on top, and then when it's cool enough to enjoy, just enjoy it. And you can have this sort of 3 times a day as a medicinal amount. Adding a little bit of honey is also delicious. But if you've got a couple of different herbs that you'd like to try together, that's fine. This is really the cool thing about herbs, is you can play. So you can say, right, okay, I've got this thing going on, and actually I'd love this herb and this herb because they're both really good for it. So you just put them both in the tea and enjoy, and you get the benefits of both of those herbs. So tea is one of the easiest ways of doing it. Steam is also really good. So it's great for coughs and colds, because what you're going to do is you're going to inhale the hot water essentially, which comes with a caveat: steam is hot, so always be a little bit careful. With this, you just get yourself a nice big bowl, a handful of herbs. Again, it can be dry, it can be fresh, it can be frozen, and then pour the boiling water on top and then just breathe in the steam. But again, just be careful with the heat. So if you've got anything chesty, anything sinusy that you just want to breathe in, absolutely fantastic for that. I personally am asthmatic, and I will use this regularly with things like rosemary, just to clear my ways and help relieve the asthma symptoms. That's me personally, but it's just such a nice, easy way of doing it. You can also use balms, you can use massage oil, you can use herbal honey. Herbal honey is hands down one of my favorite ways of taking herbs. When we did the course, all the guys were tasting it, and it was just so delicious. It's a fantastic way of doing it, and that is shown on the foundation course. Tinctures, as I said earlier, it's a way of using alcohol to extract the medicinal properties, to make sure that you get those medicinal properties, and it keeps for a long time as well. So using herbs is really easy. It's as simple as making a cup of tea. Ooh, hang on a second. I am sorry. I've gone too far. Right. Danny said I could talk about whatever I liked in this. So what I wanted to talk about was my favorite herb. Yarrow is my favorite herb. Talk to any therapist who works with herbs, or any person who works with herbs, they will have their favorite herb. And yarrow is hands down my geeky favorite herb. I love teaching about it. It's kind of known by various names, and one of the names it's known as is the soldier's herb. And this is because over a very long period of time, it's been associated with warriors and healing their wounds. So the story of Achilles is from about 400 BC. And essentially Achilles, as in the Battle of Troy, Helena, whose face launched a thousand ships, he would make a balm with yarrow to soothe and heal his soldiers' wounds. The Saxons, they were shown to use it as part of their toolkit if they went into battle. The Romans used it as well as the Vikings. And even as recently as World War II, in the UK, there was a leaflet handed out of, can you please go and forage for these herbs for us? Because at the time, we actually got a lot of our medicines from Germany. Of course, we couldn't do that then. And one of the herbs that they were asking for is yarrow, because it is so powerful as a wound herb. So therefore, it was used for the soldiers. There's even evidence about Neanderthals possibly using it, which I will talk about in a second. So what does yarrow do? This amazing herb, used outside, it stops bleeding. It really powerfully helps stop bleeding, and it encourages healing. It can help even reduce scar tissue, which is fantastic. Like many herbs, it's antibacterial, antifungal, antimicrobial as well. So if you get an injury and you use yarrow, it'll help stop the blood flow. It'll also encourage healing, but it'll help reduce any infections or anything like that. And the other thing is it's analgesic, basically. It will help reduce the pain. So it's a fantastic wound herb. They will literally have got it, ground it up, and popped it onto an injury. Interestingly, internally, it kind of does different things. It promotes blood flow. So outside the body, it stops the blood flow. Internally, it promotes the blood flow. How can that help? So if you get cold hands and feet, it can really help warm them up. I've used it helping people with Raynaud's syndrome. It can also help lower the blood pressure, which is really helpful. Anybody who suffers from really heavy or painful period pains, because it increases the blood flow and thins things out, it can help reduce those. It's a fantastic antihistamine. So anybody with hay fever, the flowers of yarrow are brilliant. Again, in a cup of tea, fantastic. It's also good for cold and flu relief. It just helps with the symptoms. It's just the best herb in the world. It's also been shown to reduce irritable bowel conditions as well. So you can use it in a tea. You can use it in a wash, which is kind of like a strong tea to use to wash the area. You can make a poultice or a balm. You can make a massage oil or a tincture. Most of those things are available to find out on the foundation course. Excuse me. But if you have any blood or kidney conditions, you really shouldn't use yarrow. As you can see, it plays with the blood, and you really don't want to mess with that. But this is why I think yarrow is just like the most amazing herb in the world, and I absolutely love it. So when Danny said I could talk about what I liked, I thought I'm going to take total advantage and talk about my favorite herb. Herbs have been used for essentially time immemorial. They really have been used forever. So the earliest written evidence, because not a lot of people use writing, is the Sumerians. So that's 3000 BC. They have tablets, they have writings that basically describe all the plants they were using, how they were using them, and what they were using them for. The earliest Chinese medicine writing we have is a writing called, and I am really sorry for probably pronouncing this wrong, Shinong Benanko Jing. And it was written by the emperor of the time. And it literally, there's over 300 plants in this writing. And it talks about their medicinal properties, how they can be used, when they shouldn't be used. It's kind of one of the earliest medical texts that they found. The Egyptians also in 1550 BC, their papyruses, they have a lot of herbal remedies. This is when they really started creating recipes for use. And it's just mind-blowing, the knowledge that they had at the time. And this doesn't include all the indigenous peoples who have no writing, who use kind of oral traditions to pass down their information. If you want to go back as early as possible, we have Ötzi, the Iceman, who was found. I think he's in the British Museum, actually, bless him. And he's from 3300 BC. And he was found with things like tattoos, with acupuncture points tattooed onto him. And he was also found carrying herbs that have medicinal uses. So they really think that he was probably walking around with his own little personal sort of first aid kit of tools of herbs to use. And if you want to get really far back, now, of course, we can't guarantee this. They might have used it, but Neanderthal grave sites from 30,000 years ago. There is a grave site that has been found, which is in a cave, and it has masses of pollen in it, which indicates that flowers were placed there. And one of the flowers that was there was yarrow. And the other two flowers that were placed there, they all have really powerful medicinal properties. Now, they don't guarantee that they were using them for the medicinal properties, but they were certainly important to the people at the time. So it's possible that Neanderthals were also using herbs. So we have used herbs for tens of thousands of years before we created the modern pharmaceutical world. And I am not against using modern pharmaceuticals, absolutely not. But I think sometimes we can probably reach for something a little bit more natural to start with and just empower ourselves. And I think that's one of the things I love about teaching herbs, using herbs, and helping others do so, is that it's empowering. It gives people the power to go, do you know what, I've got a headache, I'm going to go and reach for a herbal tea. Or I've cut myself, I know how to treat that now. And that's what I love doing, is teaching people how to empower themselves. And that's kind of part of the reason that I wrote the foundation in herbal medicine, was to empower everybody to just get some of the basics of how to use herbs in their everyday life. Now, if anybody have any questions, and Danny, you're going to come back and say hi?
I will, and I'm here. So thank you, Margaret. That was it was really awesome. I'm just going to remove actually the presentation. So are you done with the presentation? Nothing else to
I
show
am
here?
done with the presentation,
Amazing.
unless people have questions.
Amazing. Good. So now they can see our pretty faces. I wanted to share a story that I actually wanted to begin with before I actually dished it off to you. I was sitting with someone a few months ago, someone that works at a prestigious athletic department at a university in the United States, very much involved with athlete well-being and athlete and athletes that are worth, especially nowadays, that college athletes can get paid, athletes that are worth a lot of money. And we had a conversation around holistic approaches or alternative approaches to therapeutics for athletes, for injuries. And one of the questions he asked me was, have you heard of this turmeric thing? And I'm only bringing that up because this is someone that's very much on the traditional side of therapeutics, as studies, as evidence-based, as it's meant to be by the books. And this little funny I just smiled at that comment, but that just showed me how even that type of individual is open-minded and is hearing things, and is bringing up in a healthcare part of a conversation, is bringing up to me a spice that he has in the back of his cabinet. And I did not turn to him and say, that like, yes, I've heard of turmeric and its potential effects and many other things, but it just motivated me to keep exploring this, and just more evidence to me that, the more we share topics like this and talk about these things, even if they've been regurgitated for thousands of years potentially, um, it's new to so many people, because it's almost like it's an art and a medicine that's been digested and, no pun intended, digested and lost out of humanity, really, in many cultures, not every culture at all. And right, every culture still has these old wives tales or grandma's medicines and things that seem crazy, like to put a tomato inside a wrap your foot around with a tomato and it'll treat your fungi and all these different things. And there's some truth in it, right? So that's number one comment I wanted to make. The second comment, as you mentioned, like something about the pharmacy, is that people we trust a bottle of pills. We blindly trust those things because they go through rigorous processes of approval and all these different things. But what we should also acknowledge is that a lot of those medications that do have a place and do work are built out of all these different plants and herbs that you've also shown pictures of and spoken about, and many more. So it's also one that always is for anyone out there that is maybe um undervaluing the power of yarrow or any other herb out there, just to look and see that all these medicines that people are popping on a regular basis, to look at the contents of them, and a lot of the times it consists of herbs that you can forage for, right? I wanted to ask you about the foraging. Is that a skill? Is that something that one has to, with trial and error, learn and get better at? Does it involve risk?
Yeah, it does involve a little risk. Sorry, my battery's just about to go dead. One moment.
No worries.
There we go. Right. Forewarned and planned. You need to know what you're doing, which is why it's always worth going with somebody who knows what they're doing. The reason I first started doing my foraging walks was I am so lucky. I live in an area called the South Downs on the south of England, and it's just this brilliant expanse of protected area. And regularly I would go up and forage for things, and people would say, what are you picking and what are you going to use it for? And then one day I found some people picking something called dogwood, and the berries and the leaves look very similar to elderberry, as I discussed earlier. And they were picking dogwood, and dogwood will make you very, very sick. And I kind of went, I can't think of any medicinal properties for this. So can I ask what you think you're picking? And they went, oh yeah, I'm picking elderberries. I'm like, no, you're not picking elderberries. Come with me. I'll show you how to identify it. And it was the shape of the leaf and the color of the leaf and the pattern and everything else. And they were like, oh, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. I thought, I wonder if anybody else out there would love to find out how to identify herbs and use herbs. So I put it out there, and the answer was yes. So I will take people and I will tell them what kinds of environment the herb will grow in, how to identify them, when they're going to be available, how to use them, and of course when not to use them. So yeah, I would say find somebody who can take you out there and show you and touch and feel and smell and really get a good idea. That's the best way of doing it.
Have you, speaking with people, working with people, being around maybe practitioners who include herbs into their practice? Have you seen or heard of stories of people that have really like just not on an acute basis, like you mentioned with infections or your cat or things like that, but more from a chronic perspective, people that have been suffering from certain things for a while, skin issues, allergies, recurring different infections, that have been really able to turn things around and help themselves using these
Oh,
natural herbs and medicines.
absolutely, all the time. I mean, you mentioned turmeric. When I was an osteopath, I would regularly advise people to take turmeric because it's just such an easy herb to take and it's so profound and powerful. I mean, sadly, I had to stop being an osteopath because I got arthritis. But every single morning, I will take simple turmeric drink, and it just keeps the pain away. And the days where I forget for a few days, because you know what life's like, I start feeling it again, and I'm like, no, 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 take the turmeric. And within a couple of days, it's calmed right back down. So things like I mentioned the rosemary, just having a massage oil of the rosemary can really help people who have sore arthritic joints. Just massaging themselves once a day can really help benefit them, increase their mobility, decrease the pain, increase their quality of life. So there's lots of ways that you can use herbs that will help people who just got those lingering problems. But it's always a bit more complicated, because if somebody says to me, oh, I've got this, what can I take? I'm like, well, I've actually just got to do kind of a case history with you and make sure I know what conditions you have, some family history, what medications you're on, just to make sure that the herbs that I give them or advise them are the best ones for them.
Which is clear really with any medicines, or
Yeah.
anything administered to a client or a patient or an athlete, is context based, is individually based. But but when people do take these, like, try something new to tackle anything they're facing, is it how, and where we're in a a culture where we want to see results quickly.
Yeah.
Even me, when I've went through periods, and I'm always testing things on myself. So I have eczema and allergies and things, so I'm always testing things. And on days where I'm determined to maybe not try, I'll stop using all these creams and ointments that I've been using my entire life. Every one of those days feels like a whole year, because I'm like so used to using these things. So to see results even from something like turmeric, or other things, like, should one expect to see immediate results, when even days, weeks, or is it like a build up in your body, that it takes your body time to really absorb these things and influence the ecosystem of your body?
I'm going to be really annoying and say it depends. So, for example, the turmeric will take several days. If I'm working with somebody who is menopausal, for example, that can take up to a month to kick in. But there again, HRT will take a couple of weeks to kick in. Some of our pharmaceutical sort of uses will take a little while to kick in and get the levels right, just like herbs. But there are other times where, if you go and brush your hand against nettles, if you go and get your yarrow and you put some yarrow on there, it will calm down really, really quickly. And I'll give you a good example of that. I was doing a walk with a group of just ridiculously smart people, as part of like an away day they were doing for business. And I had mentioned that the herbs in a balm that I was going to let them try would help with things like nettles. So I gave them all a little test, and two of them just gleefully ran off. And I was like, what are they up to? And they rubbed their arm through nettle and came back and put it on. And I was like, please don't do this. But they'd done it. And thankfully, within 5-10 minutes, it had just calmed right down. You could barely see that there was any nettle there. And one of them was like, this is really great. I'm actually allergic to nettles. So halfway up the downs with somebody who's allergic to nettles is just rolling them. But it can work really, really quickly, thankfully. Whereas other times it can take a little bit longer. But I think that's the same with any kind of medicine. Herbs might just take a little bit longer.
And there's obviously, like, one herb could give someone a bad reaction, and another person, right, it could help and be positive. Do you have any suggestions? You mentioned the foraging. You need to know what you're doing, otherwise you might literally kill yourself, but or damage yourself. But we you can go on Amazon or online, and you can find pill forms, powder forms of all these different things that you mentioned. I know this, which is pretty scary, but in many countries, including the US, there isn't much regulation around what people are, selling these products, and not really knowing, right, what they're putting in it and what it really consists of. We kind of have to trust the companies and trust the labeling. Is there any like obvious red flags to look out for?
Finding
because
somebody who's
because they're
qualified.
also, and I'll just add to it, because these things can be expensive. Something you can pick on your one of your walks, foraging, can be very expensive in pill form or powder form from Amazon.
It can. So what I would do is I would find a therapist and ask where they get them from. Now, sometimes they will get them from places that only therapists can get them from, but sometimes they will get them from places where, so for example, there's a company called Balin's, and they are really well thought of. We know the quality is good. It's where therapists will go and get theirs. Like you say, you can go to somewhere like Amazon, and you will probably get a lot of filler. You'll just get probably a lot of bulk stuff that's not really very beneficial, or it will all be stems, not the leaves and the
Mm.
flowers. So it's just knowing where to go to get something good quality, I think, is the answer. And if you're going to go out there and forage, get somebody good local who is a therapist that knows what they're doing. I mean, I always make sure that I have permission from the landowners, if that's the council. I have make sure I have my insurance. I make sure that I'm qualified. So there are things that you can say, look, can I make sure that you're insured and qualified? And it's all above board if you're going to go and learn how to forage. But if you're going to go and buy something, a really good brand, you cannot beat a really good brand.
Good. I because it's pretty disturbing when you actually look into it and learn that there isn't much oversight, at least now, on many of these things. So one does have to be careful, and one can make mistakes, especially when you see, you're tempted because you see cheaper options out there. Unless if you're someone that cares about the money in your pocket, which most of us are, you kind of want to jump at the cheap option, but then you ask yourself, like, why is the same herb costing twice as much somewhere else, which is an annoying one that even I face on a regular basis. I wanted to bring up some non-physical like ailments, like things like people that suffer from over anxiety, stress, depressive states, over sadness, things like that. And then maybe you feel free to tie this into what you're looking into now and studying now, separate from herbs. But um, herbs can be very helpful for that, right? We're in an overstimulated culture and society in these days. I'm sure we all feel it to some degree. Everyone is a bit more than the other, but we can all agree that we're almost overstimulated, and we all feel bits of anxiety, and we all feel bits of depression. And use of simple things like herbs can also help balance us out and help
Yeah.
us relax for a second. And it's not, because right, it's not always black and white, whether whether you're seeing a psychiatrist and prescribed or not. There's a lot of in between there that can be played around with and tested, and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. In the UK, they did something called the Burnout Report, and it was released at the beginning of this year. And the statistics were just ridiculously scary. It's something like 70-80% of adults in the UK had felt so stressed that they were overwhelmed at some point in the year before. And 1 in 4 were just so overwhelmed they couldn't function. That's kind of for a period of time. That's the statistics in the UK, and I think it's pretty much the same around the world. So if we're talking about light stress and anxiety, there's loads of herbs that can help. Chamomile. And if you're going to do chamomile, you have to do a really good quality chamomile or grow it yourself. It's really, really easy to grow yourself. And once you've
So
tasted it
sorry to
fresh,
interject then, because so even that, something like chamomile tea,
yeah,
one can like be buying something that is
yeah.
not really beneficial because of how it's who's selling it and how it's grown.
So get yourself a really good brand, or if you can find it loose and you can see that it's all flowers,
Hmm.
that's a really good way of doing it. And to be honest, I grow my own. It's so easy to grow. And once you've tasted it freshly picked, ah, just sitting down with a cup of that is just It is magic, you know. You can also use elderflowers. So we've talked about elderberries, elderflowers as well. Really easy to go and forage if you're in somewhere that grows it. You just know the right time of year and you just freeze it. Honestly, you can just freeze it. Teaspoon in, absolutely delicious. So elderflowers are probably one of the most potent ones that I would give to people to help with stress and anxiety. But then you've got things like skullcap, which is great. And that's just a leaf. We just use the leaf. But again, find yourself a really good supplier. But yeah, there's quite a few different herbs that will help. And you know, I'm sure you know, because you know you love your exercise. Regular exercise has been shown scientifically to be as good as very low level antidepressants. But it's about finding an exercise you love. Because I was actually chatting at a workshop earlier this week and we were talking about exercise. I was like, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm like, so don't go to the gym. Do you like going for a walk in nature? Yeah. Do you like swimming? Yeah. Dancing? Yeah. All of these things are exercise. Go find something you love and enjoy. It's still exercise. It doesn't have to be pounding the streets running, and it doesn't have to be going to the gym.
What's your daily tea protocol?
It depends on how much time I have, genuinely. I do love my matcha tea to get me going in the morning. I will often actually have elderflower tea in the evening because it's really calming and it can help sleep. Sometimes I will have mugwort. Now, mugwort has a really big, long list of reasons not to take it. So if you're on any medication, trying for a baby, are pregnant or anything like that, you know, never take mugwort. But it really can help you sleep. The only side effect of that is it can be really trippy dreams. So it kind of depends what I want from life. If I'm feeling kind of a little bit sniffly and snuffly, I'll probably go for the elderberries. It depends on what's going on in my world, and I've literally got a collection of teapots that I use because I love making my different teas.
So in the course as well, you demonstrate a couple of these protocols, also for making different concoctions of topicals, and also making teas and things like that, which
Yeah.
which is maybe the funnest part of any course that we ever filmed. With just thinking off the top of my head, not that there weren't other fun times in the studio, but that was pretty fun having a teapot out there and zooming in on different herbs and honeys and things of the sort.
Oh, the honey was so sticky.
Yeah, so there was a question that came in here from Susan asking about can you substitute dry herbs for fresh ones when making herbal teas, like
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's fresh. It doesn't matter if it's dried, and it doesn't matter if it's frozen most of the time.
And so on that, if someone does buy like even turmeric in the supermarket in the spice container or bottle, um, like is that beneficial? Is that good enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Literally, I go into the world food aisle in my local shop because they sell in bulk, and I always use my herbs in bulk.
Hmm.
Um, and I will often, for the stuff that I use for myself, I will go and just buy it off the shelves. It's absolutely the stuff that I would buy to put in my curry. Is the stuff that I will take every morning to keep my hands good.
And in garlic, you mentioned that it needs to be eaten raw
Yeah.
in order to get the benefit. Like powdered garlic, does that
Now,
loses its effect? Going through that process.
yeah, frozen garlic, powdered garlic. It just has to be fresh. So yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. Yeah, good. And having going in being in the studio with you and going through that has been was an eye-opening experience for me. More like just a like in my face, like, hey, try some of these things out at the least. Things that at the worst case scenario taste good, so might as well, and inadvertently has made me a better chef. Just looking for health benefits, I just became a better chef, and or at least from the side I look like a better chef, throwing in some more spices. So really interesting. And so to end this, do you want to touch on what you've been working on now?
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So I love finding ways of helping people. Absolutely love finding ways of helping people, and I have always found that stress and anxiety is one of the biggest things that affect people. So when I was an osteopath, I found that if I could reduce somebody's stress about a situation, their pain level would reduce. They'd heal quicker. So it's that profound stress and anxiety and effects on our lives. So I've always been finding ways to help people from herbs and then through to mindfulness and emotional freedom technique, which is a really cool technique called the tapping technique. It's so easy to use, and also now into hypnotherapy. So I've been doing a lot of work just helping people finding ways of processing information so that they are less stressed, finding ways of removing their limiting beliefs so it just reduces the stress and anxiety in their life and just helps them achieve what they want to achieve. That's all I've ever wanted to do for people is help them live a happy, healthy life and live the life that they would love to live. And it doesn't matter whether that's through herbs, through physical therapy, and now sort of moving more towards mind therapies. It's just about helping people, and that's what I absolutely love doing.
And is that what hypnotherapy is? Is it helping people process information? Because hypnotherapy comes with that negative connotation of is it real? Question mark. And is it ethical? Question mark. Because we imagine hypnotherapy as hypnosis and someone tapping into someone's brain and acting as them in someone's brain or forcing them to do things using these techniques. So yeah, what is hypnotherapy?
Okay, I never make anybody cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog. And unfortunately, hypnotherapy is looked at a little bit by the stuff that you see on TV when they hypnotize you. And what they've done is they've taken a room of 1,000 people and they found the one or two most susceptible people and they've worked on them for an entire show to get them to do what they want to do. And that's not hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is finding out what somebody's limiting belief is or finding out what they would like to process. So things like grief, I do a lot of work with grief and helping people process grief. But it's about finding those beliefs and those fears that people have and then getting them really relaxed and they are in total control. They can open their eyes at any point in time. I cannot get them to give me any information they don't want to give me. They are in control. And then we get them nice and relaxed and we just work on the subconscious mind with their help. So we go in and so, for example, if somebody has a fear of success, which is out there, if I'm successful, all these terrible things will happen because I saw somebody who was successful and all these terrible things happen. We go in and we find out where does that belief come from? And then we can take that belief out, put something empowering in, and then just kind of watch them fly. Being scared of spiders or cats or something usually comes from an experience. So again, we just get them nice and relaxed. We find out where it happened, put something empowering in, take the negative thing out, and watch them fly.
Very interesting, and also and herbs can play that part as well, right? Because even if someone coming in with an injury to get a massage or from body work, they could use herbs to relax before a session, and then they're just increasing their chances of getting more out of it, healing quicker, etc.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes massage can create inflammation or it can release inflammation. So you can use some herbs to help reduce the inflammation. There are other herbs such as dandelion, which act as a diuretic. And what you can do is, and nettles as well, but you mustn't ever take these ones if you've got any kidney problems or on diuretics. So you can help the body flush out any toxins or inflammation that are released from physical work. So you can use herbs in that way, and it's a brilliant way to enhance the treatment that somebody's had.
I will ask you a last question to, and you're allowed to answer it however you would like. It's going to be like of a spiritual question, if you will, and we can edit this part out from the recording too, if you don't like where this is going. But why do you think all these herbs are on Earth with all these properties?
Do you know what? That is a really interesting question. I think
Sorry,
often,
sorry.
no, it's fine. It's brilliant. I love it. I think a lot of them are just minding their own business. They're just being what they can be in the best way that they can, and by accident they're useful to us. I think that's kind of how we ended up using them. A lot of the reasons that we use them are anti-inflammatory, they are antibacterial, antifungal, and antimicrobial. That is simply just the plant trying to get through life without getting any bacteria or fungus on it. We just use that. So why are they here? I think they're just kind of just enjoying their own lives and just being, and they're accidentally useful to us. But the beauty of life is that there is just so much variety out there. And you know what, you walk down the road and there is that little dandelion and it's pushing its way up through that concrete. And I think sometimes you just go, little plant, go you. You've probably been sprayed with pesticides. There's probably little to no nutrients by your roots, yet you are smashing it and you are beautiful in your own way. And you also happen to be useful from a herbal point of view. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think I challenged you here on the spot, and I think you have a good one. And minding their own business. We'll
yeah, I
summarize
think
the answer as that. Yeah,
it's
that's
like
great.
animals that we haven't discovered yet, and plants that we haven't discovered yet. They're just out there foraging, forging their own little paths. And if you ever want a brilliant book to read, the Hidden Life of Trees is one, and it just talks about how trees communicate through
I think
sound,
they
through
made a
sight.
documentary on the book. I think.
That would be cool. I'd love to watch
Yeah.
the books. Just by page 6, my mind was blown about how they communicate and how they share. You've got plants and their roots interconnect using mycelium, which is basically kind of mushroom network. And if one tree is dehydrated and doesn't have enough sugary content to survive, the other trees will send it to them. I mean,
And
how,
they warn each other if a fire is coming and things like that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing.
there's and they use sound as well. There was an experiment where there was a beetle that would come along and eat a certain type of tree, and very slowly, because plants do everything slowly. That's the only reason we don't communicate with them, is it's all slowly. And that plant will slowly start producing a toxin which is bitter to these beetles, and then the beetles will go away to another area. So they recorded the sound of the beetles eating the tree, and they went to another area where there were no beetles, and they played it to these trees. And within a few hours, the trees started producing this toxin. So they heard the beetles. So we look at plants and we just kind of go, they're plants, but they're not. They're living. They've got soul. They hear. They communicate. They take care of their own young. If you've got a tree, it will prioritize its own young in helping it. It's just beautiful, and that's So I think that probably answers your question a bit better.
Amazing. And yeah, and it's also important to acknowledge with all these things, right? Like we really don't know like the power of so many of these, plants and herbs and trees and leaves and everything out there, right? We're still discovering, like people are still, the cannabis plant, people are still discovering new things every single day. Like we really don't know because there hasn't been that many modern scientific studies on most of them, all of them. It's
A lot of it is because the pharmaceutical companies can't patent what they need to patent to make the money.
and because it's
And
in the hands of
sadly,
Mother Nature and the man or woman upstairs. Margaret, thank you so much.
thank
As
you, Danny.
always,
It's
this
been a
was
joy.
fun. We will do this again. We'll do another podcast together. Thank you, everyone who has joined us from again all corners of the world. It's pretty amazing. So have a good weekend, everyone. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And you should see on the top of this screen a button to click on to go directly to the neilasher.com website and see the page of Margaret's online course with us on the foundations of herbal medicine, which is a major blow up of everything, the bits and the seeds that we touched on today on this huge topic that's definitely worth exploring as an individual, as a practitioner. Definitely worth looking into and learning, because even a bit of it might be if you're a massage therapist, and maybe there's a herb that you can include within your topical massage creams or massage oils that can be beneficial to you and be beneficial to your customers. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to uncover. I am experimenting a lot because of that course, and I wishing everyone the best. So thank you for joining us, Margaret. Thank you again, and we'll see everyone in the next live class and webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.